Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the show. It is Swing for the Fences, episode number 5. It's the day after the day after the day after show. I'm Steve Silver, and joining me always is Swanee. And Swanee, I got to be honest with you, man. That was one hell of a way to come after the All-Star break, right?
Have you ever watched somebody, looks like they really got together? Maybe they're jogging down the street. They really look like they're used to jogging. And then all of a sudden you see them trip on the curb and just totally eat shit. And they kind of look around like, did anybody see that? That's what that was on Friday and Saturday. And then, they won yesterday with 2 runs.
Dude, it's like kids falling off of bikes. I can watch that shit all day long.
It's disappointing. I mean, there was some spinstering going on yesterday in TV, as you can imagine. But yeah.
Well, yeah, you let me know about the spin too. That was beautiful. But
I will tell tales.
We actually have a pretty good show today. We're going to talk about the Detroit series because it was probably what you and I expected to see it. Especially coming off the home run derby and the All-Star break. A lot of good vibes coming in and out of Seattle during that time, but that was quite an interesting series. If you guys want to join us on the program, there's multiple ways to do that. You can leave a message or comment on any of the Facebook posts. You can head over to the Swinging for the Fences Facebook page. You can also get a hold of us through our Patreon page. We definitely have one of those at patreon.com/swingforthefences. Or you can hit us up on our email, which is swingingpod@gmail.com. But before we get into today's show, I want to let everybody know, of course, it is Mariner Monday, which means it's Mariner Trivia Monday. And today's trivia question, Swanee, is... Ready for this one?
Yeah.
Name the last Mariners starter with a minimum of 500 at-bats to finish the season under 200.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And there's also a really cool historical context with it.
500 at-bats, not 500 plate appearances.
500 at-bats, it means a full season.
Okay.
Because, we've had a lot of, like, in the course of the last 10, 15 years, we've actually had, I can't name them all, but I'm sure there's been a lot of part-time players that didn't pan out in Seattle that finished the season under 200. I'm not talking about those guys. I'm talking about the last starter.
Okay. I think I got a good idea. I mean, I was thinking I'd have to go back to the early 80s for this, but you've been fooling me lately. So
I will say
I'm going to bet it's a lot more recent than I think.
Actually, it's not.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I'll give you the context, right? I'll give you in the years in which this happened. It happened between 1987 and 1994. That's all I'm going to say.
Oh, okay. Well, then that throws my Mike Zunino guess right out of the water.
You know what? I think Zunino in his first full season, I think he finished like 210, like 209, somewhere in that. I have to look it up, but I don't think he finished the season under 200. And if he did, then I don't think it's not Mike Zunino. I can tell you that. Okay.
He didn't have enough at bats in 2014. He hit 199 in 2014, but he only had 438 at bats.
Right.
So
yeah, minimum 500.
I'm impressed. 1984 to 1994, 1987 to 1994.
94.
Okay.
And it's the historical context is tied because, see, if I actually tell you what that is beforehand, then it's going to be like, oh, I know the player.
Sure.
Yeah, so I'm not going to do that.
Okay, don't ruin.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that. Excuse me. But, so we're coming out of the All-Star break, and a lot of positive vibes. The Mariners took 7 out of 9 heading into the break. They did it against 3 very good teams. 2 of them most likely will be playoff teams. We have the All-Star celebration, the whole Seattle Love Fest for Julio Rodriguez and his single round record for home runs in a derby that actually has no historical context.
It means zero.
It means zero, except for the fans, right? So he gave the fans what they wanted, which is whatever. So the Mariners come out of the All-Star break, and I found it quite interesting because Scott Service, was talking about all this brotherly love, this unity, about how these guys showed up on Thursday to take BP, take infield, get themselves sharp, and then they come out in game one and they look absolutely rusty.
Yeah.
They come out in game two and get shut out. And in game three, they only managed to score 2 runs, but their pitching staff held off Detroit, and so they themselves deliver a shutout. Not the most ideal situation. Teoscar Hernandez was 0 for 12 in the series with 8 strikeouts.
Yes.
You know what? I'll just say it. They got beat up.
Oh yeah.
There's no excuses. There's no excuses whatsoever. This was the exact opposite that needed to happen coming out of the All-Star break. They needed to keep that momentum because it's not going to get easier over the course of the next 25 games. And all of a sudden, first place Minnesota comes in for 4, and then Toronto comes in for 3. And then you drop 2-3 to a Tigers team that came in, I believe, 11 games under 500.
Mm-hmm.
The Tigers are not a good team. Oh, by the way, we took 2 out of 3 from them in Detroit back in May. This was supposed to be a layup series to get back into the swing of the second half. And
at worst, you win 2 of 3. At worst. And maybe one of those is the other guy just throws a good game at you and you lose 4-3, 3-2, not 6-0.
Right.
Yeah. Finally yesterday in the post game, Scott Service, and he's he'll repeat the company line, and we got to get going. I'm going to stop short of saying distress. I don't know if I heard distress in his voice, but I heard almost a defeated disappointment in his voice when he said, because he was praising the pitching staff yesterday's 2-0 win. But he said offensively, we got to start scoring some runs, and it wasn't an anger, right. But it was just kind of it finally sounds like some legitimate frustration. He didn't go off, he didn't rant or anything like that, but it was like, he must not be a good poker player on the road. I mean, if they play 5 card, the players must take all his money, whatever he has, or the other coaches. He sounded like a defeated, disappointed person after a 2-0 win, which in one respect was good. Okay, cool.
Sure.
I would have preferred to have seen that in late April, not now. Better late than never, I guess. But, looking at the math, with that win yesterday, trying to figure it out the rest of the way here, I left my other notes at work.
Well,
but basically, 46 and 26 is what they got to get to.
Well, you were saying, you said you actually texted me during the first game of the series, and you basically said, to get to the magical 92 win mark. I think you might have even said 94. They had to go
94.
94. They would have to go 47 and 25 the rest of the way. Well, they just lost 2. So if you're looking at in the context of losses, they only can lose 25 more times, and they just dropped 2. So now it's 23.
Yes, and
23 more times the rest of the way.
The math is just not in their favor.
It's not there.
And it's like you have a series like this. The only way to rectify this is suddenly you're going to have to start sweeping teams. Because they were 45 and 44 for the break. So originally I had said they need 94 wins. That would have meant they need to win 49 more games. Looking at the trends and how every other team is doing, especially in that wild card race, I'm going, okay, well, maybe they don't need 94. 92 might do it. I'm going to lower it by 2 games. But even then, okay, so they got to win 47 games. Now it's basically 46 and 24. If I look at my numbers again real quickly, it's still, you got to win 2 out of 3 every series. And if you have a series like they just had, well, then you got to turn around and answer that with a sweep. Now, can they sweep Minnesota? Can they take they should be able to at least split with Minnesota in this series.
Well, you would hope.
And they take 2
hope.
or 3 at Minnesota next week when they go back on the road.
Right. So it's 4 against Minnesota, 3 against Toronto, 3 at Minnesota, 3 against the Diamondbacks, who are not in first place anymore because they've fallen off a little bit, not a lot, but still a very good team.
Mm-hmm.
Home against Boston for 3, with the down in Anaheim for 4 against the Angels, home 2 against San Diego, and then 3 against Baltimore. And this was really like quote unquote the easy series.
Yeah.
This was really like the one that would set the tone. This is not going to get any easier.
Mm-hmm.
And when you come out and you say it's like 47 wins, which means they're in a position where they're going to have to sweep some teams. Now, if my recollection is correct, the only teams that they were able to sweep this year were the Oakland A's, correct?
The A's twice.
The
A's twice, to be expected, and the powerhouse Colorado Rockies, the last place team of the National League West. They swept them, and everybody else was a near miss. As I'm scanning down, they didn't have any other sweeps. So,
how does that happen with this current roster? Let me rephrase that. How does that happen with this current lineup configuration? Because really, there's only been a 10-game stretch that I've seen where they weren't swinging for the fences. No pun intended.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't revert back to that old. They didn't revert back to their old tendencies of waiting for that 3-run home run that never comes. That was recently, the 2 against Tampa, the 2 against the Giants, and then the 3 out of in Houston, where they actually collectively played well on offense, where they were taking their singles and taking their walks. That didn't happen this last series.
It's as if they reverted back to the mean.
Well, it almost sounds daunting. It almost sounds like it's near impossible that they're going to be able to finish this off. I mean, granted, in a couple of weeks we got the deadline, so who knows? Maybe there might be some help there. But when I look up and down this schedule, they don't really get a breather until August 14th through the 17th when they travel to Kansas City.
It might be too late for the feel-good tour by the time that happens. Yeah.
I don't know. I just was not impressed against Detroit.
No.
It almost seems like the Mariners play down to competition. It seems like they can be competitive against other playoff teams, but when it comes to teams where they should, the attitude, the attitude is be aggressive because we know that they're better than them. It almost seems like they take them for granted, like they're looking past. There's no excuse for dropping 2 out of 3 to Detroit. I'm sorry.
No. And the whole thing of, well, it was a close one on Friday night. Not really. They scored late to make it close. That was pretty much an ass beating.
Right.
The Friday night game was pretty much a whipping. I mean, I think it was 5-1 at one point. Right.
And then, I think Ford hits a home run. They put themselves in position in the 9th inning. I think the go-ahead run was on first base and Julio was at the plate.
Yeah, and he gets caught looking, which is one of the worst at bats I've ever seen from him.
By the way, that's your superstar.
Yeah, it was 5-2 in the 7th after Matan homer just hit a 2-run
That's another
homer.
thing. How is Nick Matan homering? He was literally just sent down. He was recalled from AAA Toledo.
Yeah.
He was sent down because he can't do those things, and then he
hitting under 170.
My blood is boiling. Just the thought of Nick Matan going yard just makes my blood boil.
How anybody can have any positivity right now with this team is beyond me.
Well, I don't want to get into the quintessential Mariner curmudgeon, but I mean it's. especially after coming off that stretch heading into the break. And I wasn't one of those like we're finally back type of guys.
Sure.
But I was like, okay.
Yeah, step in the right direction.
Step in the right direction, and we finally have some momentum.
Mm-hmm.
And then we cut the what was it, the Friday night game, the opener of the Detroit series, and I look at that lineup and I'm thinking to myself, like, is Service mad at somebody? Because he benches Jared Kelenic versus the lefty for AJ Pollock. And then you looked at that bottom half of the lineup. It was Pollock, Murphy, and Caballero, and I'm like, well, that's 3 straight outs to round out. It's, Jared Kelenic. Yes, he's fallen off, but there's still no excuse for him not to be in the lineup against lefties. It's like you're like the first game back, your best lineup should be on the field.
He said in the pregame that day that we're going to do a little more platooning. We need to get everybody involved. I'm like, okay, well, if everybody was good and deserving to be on the field, I would understand that. That ain't the case.
That makes no sense. Let me ask you a question, Scott.
It sounds like participation trophy to me.
Yeah, let me ask you a question, Scott. Are you guys actually realistically in the hunt? Yes. Then what are you doing playing AJ Pollock?
Yeah.
What benefit does he bring to this 26-man roster right now? What does he do good that warrants him being in the lineup? And I'll say it right now. I know fans love Jose Caballero, and I do too, but he is not an everyday player.
No, to me, he was a stopgap. And I think I said in the last show, his opportunity was there. This is a great opportunity for him. And he's had a couple times where he's played well and come up with the hits, but I feel like the opportunity, it isn't completely passed by. Maybe it should be over, but he hasn't taken full advantage of it. I think if Colton Wong wasn't so god awful bad, he'd be back down in Tacoma. They start making roster moves, he'd be optioned back down to Tacoma. And frankly, that's right where he should be right now. Yeah. AJ Pollock, the only benefit, and I'm pickaxe digging on this. If you had room on the bench, he's a right-handed bat that can pop one out every so often. Is that a threat? No. Did he have a couple big hits? Yeah, there was a game that he basically won against the A's in the sweep in Oakland that he really did come through big. But that doesn't justify. Right. It wasn't enough to justify. We're gonna go with him tonight. We're gonna start him tonight.
Right.
If you were in this stretch, here's another thing. I think they have 23 games in 24 days. If you're at day 17 or 18 of that, and you're going, we got to give Jared a day off. We got to give Teoscar a day off.
Right.
And put another outfielder out there. That's when you put Pollock in the lineup.
For
not
sure.
right now.
Not the first game back after the All-Star break.
Rested. No.
Exactly. Well,
but you and I both know that lineup card comes from upstairs. The marching orders come from upstairs. I don't believe that's a service move. And if it was, it's a bad one.
It's a bad one. You know what? The only explanation I have is maybe they want AJ Pollock in the lineup a little bit more because we are getting close to the deadline.
Good point.
You know what I mean? And
good
so
point.
maybe AJ Pollock will get thrown in as a just to round out a package. I don't know. Like
sure.
That's the first thing that comes to my mind. But even then, it's like that dude has no value whatsoever. But getting
167. Thank God he had a hit in that game, and then he was pinch hit for by Mike Ford. I think in the ninth inning was when Ford homered.
Right, but wasn't he also the guy that froze on third base with the ground ball to second base, where the second baseman actually had to dive to make the play, and Pollock easily could have scored.
Oh, I missed that.
He ended up staying on third base.
I missed that.
The thing I like about Caballero. Here's the problem about Caballero. Does he have speed? Yep. Can he swipe a bag? 100%. He plays multiple positions. He can play third, short, second. He can play an outfield position. But the problem is they already have a guy on the roster that can already do that, and his name is Dylan Moore.
Mm-hmm.
And they gave Dylan Moore a 3-year contract extension for some weird reason. So that's the thing. It's like they already have a Swiss Army knife player in Dylan Moore. And so like if Caballero was actually consistently hitting versus left-handed pitching, where at least you can point to something and say, well, he at least does that well, where it would, you can possibly warrant an opportunity. But things have changed, and Caballero isn't doing those things, and the idea that these moves are okay, coming straight out of the break, knowing that you guys are still within shouting distance of a wild card, you can't afford to drop games. These small things lead to these small moves lead to much bigger issues and much bigger problems if they don't work out. And of course, chances are pretty good. Like if you were to give me a percentage to, if you were to ask me what percentage do I think of it not working out, it's probably like 80-85%. It just made no sense.
Yeah.
And now that you've dropped 2 out of 3, and now you have a first place team coming in for 4, then you have a very good Toronto team coming in. Is that, it makes you wonder what more other head scratching moves are on their way. They can't afford these mistakes. That's the problem. It's just
So looking at the updated math, they're 46-46 right now, and it bothers me that that's treated as some sort of, hey, we're at 500. That's,
by the way,
it's like we're living in 2011 again, where it's, we're trying to take these baby steps. This isn't supposed to be that. The updated math, they need to go 46-24 the rest of the way. So every loss that hacks away at that 24 losses that they can afford, this is to get to 92 wins. And like I said, 92 might not be enough. It may. I think the math is showing that might get you in the last wild card spot, but really you should win 94 to get the 5th spot, not the last one, kind of like they did last year. 24 losses. You have 2 to 3 more bad weeks. That even 2 to 3 more mediocre to below average weeks. That number is going to be down at like 13, 12.
Yeah,
and then you're going to sit here and tell me they're going to run off this 1995 style streak? Not going. We all know that's bullshit. Not
chance. Dude, it's 100% bullshit. And I think I think really how it evens out, 47 wins just to get to 92, and that's probably not going to be enough. If they finish with a 92 win season, you can tip your cap, because the way that this season has turned out, for them to go on that type of run to finish with 90 to 92 wins, that's a good way to finish off the season.
Yeah, it would be an accomplishment. It would be an accomplishment and a slight disappointment at the same time.
Oh, 100%.
Which is, kind of rare, but these are the Mariners and they do things we don't expect.
But I think it also equals out to 2 losses a week. They can have no more than 2 losses a week.
Yeah, basically. If we're looking at 1, 2, I'm counting right now.
I'm not saying it's impossible, Swanee, but what I am saying is that it's highly improbable.
Yeah.
It just
11 weeks left.
But this is exactly what happens when you don't play with a sense of urgency early in the season.
Right there.
I hate the cliche. I hate the cliche that it's excuse me, that when people say that it's still early, it's still early. It doesn't matter.
No.
Like you should be playing with a sense of urgency. I said it coming into this season that they cannot have a slow start. They have to play aggressive from the start. Mm-hmm. If that means stealing bases, if that means hit and run, if that is playing with some sense of a reckless abandon. But that being said, make a defense make the mistake. They just didn't do it.
Yeah.
Their style of play does not lend to that style of ball. But when they did do that, they had their best run.
In contrast, a team that started fast, and this is ridiculously fast, was Tampa. Now, Tampa may have, fallen off, as some people have claimed. Oh, Tampa, starting to struggle. The Orioles have caught them, which is hilarious because I had a ton of Mariner fans saying that the Orioles were going to fade. The Orioles will fade. They're like, it's going to go away. Okay, well, maybe still, but they've won 8 straight at last check. Baltimore's almost caught Tampa in the East. That being said,
Right.
Tampa's still 60 and through 96
There's
games.
Tampa
Tampa is 60 and 36. Even if they suck the rest of the year, that red hot streak, all they got to do is play barely over 500 ball, less than 500 ball. That hot start is going to carry them. And you know what? That's okay because they'll end up in the playoffs anyway.
Yeah.
So this whole, it doesn't matter how you start, how you finish. I know that's a Pete Carroll thing. I think too many Seattle fans have heard that from Pete Carroll too long, which it's true in football. It is true to an extent in football. But in baseball, you do have so much time to make up. But you can't piss these things away. And I just feel like they've done that. And, here we're talking. Look, I already got my eyes on Everett. I'm tired of hearing about Arkansas. I already got my eyes on Everett and Tacoma. And I'm not quite looking at next year. But you know what? I'm bullshitting myself if I say I'm not, because I really am.
Oh,
I'm looking at this going, okay. And
I'll be the first one to
melancholy attitude, but I mean, I feel like a dog that's been kicked a few too many times.
Well, you know what? I'm not. I'll come out and say it. I am looking towards next year, and the reason is because I'm curious to see how this trading deadline is going to play out, because that's going to have a huge impact on what we do next year, and the configuration of this team. So yeah, I'm 100% looking over at 2024 because I don't think we're going to be in the playoffs.
No,
I think because we pissed away the month of June. That's the reason why we're in this position.
If we get a 10-game win streak, that's minimum right now.
Right.
Minimum to make me go, okay, right there. And to hear this, we're 5 games out in the wild card. It's how many teams you got to jump, and other teams got to win, and it's totally different than the division. Again, it's this 1995 mentality. We just need to make up those 5 games. Yeah, but you're making it up against 6 other teams.
Do you know how hard it is to make up 5 games, by the way?
Because I would imagine you probably have to win about 13 in a row.
Probably, you're right, because that's exactly right. Because your opponent's win-loss also matters as well too.
You're very rarely going up against them head-to-head.
You can't reel off just 5 in a row and think you're gonna make that ground up, because what if your nearest competitor wins 3 out of 5?
You win 5 in a row, you might make up 2 games.
2 games.
You might only make up 1.
Correct. So, all right. So I guess the consensus is that they completely marinered to open up the second half. The Mariner will Mariner.
I mean, it's a shit down the leg that
one of
I didn't expect. I thought at worst they'd take 2 or 3, and one of them would be okay. They got away. I didn't think they were going to play great by any means. I didn't think they had to. I figured they would sweep. Hey, I said they would sweep the Nationals, and they lost 2 of 3. But to your point earlier, where you said they play down to their competition, it's series like this,
right,
where you should sweep, and you end up losing 2 of 3 to a team. Those you cannot afford that. And then they bounce back. They won 2 of 3 from the Rays. Okay, they play up to some good competition, and they do because they have the pitching to be able to do that. But the constant playing down, it's just, look, man, the clock is ticking. There's no clock in baseball. There's a pitch clock now. The clock is the calendar at this point.
Right. Well, turning the page, Swanee, I got a question to ask you.
Hit me.
What is this fascination with Mariner fans wanting Shohei Ohtani and nobody else?
I would call it the Ichiro factor.
The Ichiro factor.
Okay. And that there's some sort of savior that's going to come in here and change the fortunes of everything. First of all, it's now granted with free agency, usually that who throws the most money lands 100%. The most play.
100%.
We saw that with Robinson Cano. But you're going to have to do that. You're going to have to do, if you wanted to get him here, you're going to have to do something incredibly wild. I mean, if you believe what the rumors are, and I'm sure agents are pubbing this out to the media, and the media is parroting it, but it may very well be true. You're talking a $500 million contract for a guy who's not. I look up and see. I don't think Ohtani's that young.
29.
Okay.
So he was
26 or 27. I'd be a little more inclined to that. Boy, that's a lot of money. Ooh. I mean, you could bankrupt your franchise theoretically.
I will say this.
If it works, it's great. But if it doesn't, you're in a world of shit.
First and foremost, the Angels are not trading Shohei Ohtani to us.
Not a chance.
Okay, that will never happen.
No. And he's not going to Houston.
No, he's not.
He's not going anywhere in the AL West.
He's not going to the New York Yankees either. The Yankees have already came out and said we're not taking on that payroll.
Yep.
Not unless we can ship you some payroll to balance it out. But they're not just going to straight up take the payroll on.
Yeah.
But the reason why he's not coming to Seattle on August 1st, it's quite simple. Because you don't trade the best player in baseball to your division rival, regardless of what we send them. We can send them a package of 5, and it makes them unbelievably better. They're still not going to do that because the last thing that the Angels want to see is your division rival lap you, make the playoffs, and then the Angels not getting into the playoffs. If I were Artie Moreno, the owner of the Angels, and I had a GM that traded the best player in baseball to my division rival, only to watch my division rival get to the playoffs while we sat at home, that GM is fired. So that's number one. But number two, trading for Shohei Ohtani means that we're not going to be like the pieces that we have to trade, which means probably 3 of our 25-man roster is going to be gone, plus a couple more prospects to throw into boot. If doing that is going to make us worse off, even with Shohei Ohtani.
I do believe Jeff Passan, if I was reading his article, or maybe I saw it somewhere else, but the conversation starter for the Angels, an organization would have to have 3 top 100 prospects
100%
willing to part with before the Angels will even answer the phone
100%
or return an email.
I would probably
the Mariners have that. Yes. Will they push with him? No. So, boy, I'm Steve. I'm going to sound like I'm just shitting on the fans left and right, but it's this delusion that exists in this fan base, and I'd be curious to see if there's a more delusional fan base in baseball and a more divided fan base in baseball than the Mariners, because of the bitterness that's been built up over 40 plus years. If there is, I'd love to know what it is.
I think you're right, because when you said it was the Ichiro factor, my first thing went, wait a second. Didn't our fans shit all over Ichiro because he never spoke English and he was just a singles hitter? That was like the biggest biggest argument that I've ever, like, this dude, like that dude was a Hall of Fame player and you're shitting on a Hall of Fame player, the most underappreciated Hall of Fame player I've ever seen. $20+
million a year for a guy who, I mean, there's some legit to this complaint, but my complaint to it would be they never put enough around him.
Right.
It's an organizational complaint, not an Ichiro complaint.
Right, but when the Mariners were good in 2001, 2002, and 2003, Ichiro was a catalyst.
Absolutely.
Oh my god.
And that was before they were paying him $20+ million a year.
Correct, right?
That only came after he broke the hits record in 2004, and he was up for a new contract.
So here's why I agree with you about our fans being delusional. I don't like to shit on fans, but the reality
I love shitting on fans, just for the record.
The reality is they want Shohei Ohtani, and of course we saw the chants at the All-Star game, come to Seattle, we want you in Seattle, whatever the chant was. But the reality is and I just lost my train of thought.
Well, he has to want to come here too. I mean,
correct.
He is a big enough name, and he's going to have some say, because basically if he gets traded, anywhere he gets traded to, he has to want to re-sign there.
Well,
no one in their right mind is going to get him for a rental.
This is what I was going to say. When it specifically comes to this, and I've heard so many ridiculous trade proposals. One of them even include Colton Wong into the deal, and I just had to laugh. They don't want they don't want anybody except for Shohei Ohtani. And I just threw this out one just to see if it would stick to the wall. Okay. I said, here's something interesting, because the San Diego Padres got a hold of the Yankees and said, hey, Juan Soto is available.
Yep.
And the Yankees said, we're not taking on any payroll. Okay, fine. I was like, well, wait a second. The Mariners can take on payroll.
Yeah.
And Juan Soto has not just the rest of this year, but also next year until he can opt out and be a free agent again. So you get Juan Soto for a year and a half. And oh, by the way, I don't give a shit about what Juan Soto is doing this year. He's 20. I think he's 26 years old.
Yeah, he's very young.
He's very young, and he has a very good track record of not only being a power hitter, but having all those on-base peripherals. I would raid villages. I would literally beat somebody up. I'm trying to think of anything that anyway. For Juan Soto in a Mariner uniform.
I too would commit physical violence to get Juan Soto to the Mariners.
Dude, having Julio bat second and Juan Soto bat third, with Ty France hitting behind that, I would love that.
They put that,
and I threw that out there because, like, here's the thing, right? Juan Soto would be about $300 million cheaper than Shohei Ohtani.
And the Padres have a history of trading with the Mariners.
100%.
That's well documented.
And because you have a trade history, their demands are not going to be sky high. We're still going to have to give something up for Juan Soto, but it wouldn't be what the Angels would be asking for Shohei Ohtani.
No.
And by the way, Juan Soto, with his gap-to-gap power, would absolutely crush at T-Mobile Park.
Yes,
like because
he's a line drive hitter who can hit down the lines and on the gaps.
And I understand this season, but last year in San Diego, in that pitcher's park, he used that to his advantage and had a phenomenal season.
Yeah,
Juan Soto in Seattle would be phenomenal, and Mariners fans said that's not what we need. And I said, excuse me, what do you mean? Then what do we need? Shohei Ohtani.
Apparently we need the big star power.
Because if they don't,
if they feel good, Steve, we don't need to win. We just need to feel like we're going to win.
Because in one breath they said that we don't need a new DH because Mike Ford, who is not going to be here next year.
Yeah,
Mike Ford, who never should have been on the roster, except
Mike
for his
Ford
contract.
might not be here in 2 weeks.
Right. Mike Ford is the DH of the future, but Shohei Ohtani. And I said to myself, well, here's the thing. If it is star power, Juan Soto is a fucking star. Juan Soto is a star.
I guess it's because he played in the National League before and people don't realize, like, he is
No,
solid.
They just have, because they're in the National League, they don't watch baseball.
Yeah.
They just know that Shohei, and okay, let me back this up. Okay, because this is totally Seattle. And yes, you know what? I might be shitting on my hometown, but I don't give a fuck. This is how ridiculous it is. I'll tell you what. Okay, this is how you know Seattle is a bandwagon town. They are fickle, finicky. This is how I know. When the Seahawks were at their peak, okay, where the bulk of the 12s that showed up were not there to watch football. They were there to be seen because that is what everybody else was doing, and that's what's cool.
It became the fashionable thing.
Would I like Shohei Ohtani in America? Yes, of course. Do I want to pay the $600 million? Well, it's not my money, so yeah. But
you'll pay for it. You'll pay for it some way or another. If you want to watch baseball, you'll pay for it. Most of these fans
who want Shohei Ohtani don't want Shohei Ohtani for baseball purposes. They want Shohei Ohtani because everybody else wants him.
It's like a trophy wife in baseball or something.
Do you know how and why Shohei Ohtani would rule in Seattle? Have you given it any thought?
No, they probably heard it on a message board and went, "Yeah, that sounds good. It makes
No,
me
it was because
good."
it was at the All-Star game and the entire city was chanting, "We want you in Seattle."
He didn't seem to reciprocate that thought in the post game. Now he had a translator with him, obviously.
Well,
but
he
when
said
he was
he heard
asked
it.
about it, I mean,
He said he heard it.
Yeah, he landmine dodge stepped that question. He answered it very quickly. He wasn't rude or dismissive, but he just said,
I thought he answered it professionally.
He
Right?
did. He did. It was
I thought he
basically
did.
professional.
And he said, I love Seattle fans. I love the passion.
Sure.
But he didn't say he was going to come here. He didn't even say if he was interested.
He didn't say, I like that right field deck out there.
Yeah. Yeah, he didn't say that either, right? So it's like, he didn't like the loser banners that were hanging up there in right field. But yeah, no, I just, that's the thing. It's like, Juan Soto, by the way, is the reasonable choice because he's cheaper in every aspect. And of course the Mariners are cheap, but not for that reason. But he's a 3-time All-Star. He can hit 40 home runs. He can steal bases. He's a good defender. There's a reason why he commands those type of that type of contract, and he's available.
I'm going to throw hot water on this a little bit more.
Juan Soto still gets you where you want to go.
Yes. Okay. Perfect segue to what I was about to say.
Fair enough.
How many playoff teams has Juan Soto been on in his young career? How many times has Shohei Ohtani been to the playoffs?
That would be.
I'm not saying Ohtani's bad, but one man does not a team make.
Right.
If you have not watched the Angels, which every Mariners fan should have in the last 15 years, you're watching the Angels. They play each other a lot. They have had a guy named Mike Trout, who's one of the best players. I think might be the best all-around player in the last decade. Maybe not right now, but in the past decade, if you whole body of work. How many times have the Angels made the playoffs with two of these giant superstars? Juan Soto has been a part of a team. Now, he's highly paid for a good reason, as you said.
Right.
But he's been on some playoff teams.
Right.
How far did the Padres make it last year? Doorstep of the World Series. 4 years ago, where was Juan Soto? World Series.
Yep. In 2019, he was a part of the team that beat the Astros in the World Series.
Yep.
So he's got a ring. Last year, he was in the LCS.
Yeah.
Where they lost to Philly. But they
got upset by Philly. I mean, when that series started, you really went, okay, I think San Diego's going back to the World Series. And the Phillies just, they were on a momentum and they were tough to beat. But, I mean, you can't crap on San Diego's season last year. They did take steps upward in the past couple of years. I mean, even though they kind of flopped in 2021.
By the way, Juan Soto's played in 29 postseason games, including a ring. And his quad slash, he's batted .261 with a .349 OBP, a .495 slugging, and an OPS of .845, 7 home runs, 21 runs batted in. He's drawn 13 walks in the postseason, and he's scored 19 times. Versus Shohei Ohtani, which is 0.
Yeah. And if you bring on a
by the way, that doesn't stop me from getting Ohtani, by the way.
Okay. Sure. Here's what would stop me. If you have to pay $530 million to get him here and it balloons your payroll, you are not going to be able – you better be developing some hitters. We've seen the M's can do pitchers. You better start developing some hitters to be around him that are on club control contracts because you are not going to be you're not going to be able to afford to keep anybody on that. You run into the mentality that the worry that Griffey had in the 90s. It's going to be me out here with 8 other AAA guys in the lineup, which didn't happen, obviously, but it was a worry. And at the time, it was the way the Mariners quickly dismantled the 95 team or didn't hold on to them. That was a legitimate concern at the time before Griffey signed his contract that took him through the 2000 season. So the same thing here. Now, is Juan Soto making a lot of money? Of course. But the point, I guess my point is, Juan Soto has been a part of some teams. You could still have him and have pieces with him. It's been done in Washington. It's been done in San Diego.
Right.
You break the bank for Shohei, you're not going to be able to afford anyone else. So you are in an Ichiro situation where you have the one big
Yeah.
superstar player, and then fans are going to bitch about it,
Right.
and you're not going to make the playoffs.
The other thing you bring up a very valid point. I mean, if you pay $600 million, which over 10 years is $60 million a season.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The biggest problem with that is by the way, and if you're going to do that and you're giving them a 10, there should be outs. There should be outs after 3 years. There should be an out for the player. If he wants to test free agency after 3 years, there should be an out. There should be an out after 5 years for the team.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there should be outs for the team to not be able to carry the length of that contract. That's the first thing.
The Cano contract should be a cautionary tale because there were no outs on that thing. But that was one of the reasons. That was one of the reasons that he came here is because Zaremchuk didn't. Zaremchuk negotiated that they didn't. They said, you know what, we don't need any out. We'll commit all the way to you.
Right.
And that commit all the way.
Robbie was like, and Robbie was like, sweet, I get $24 million for a decade.
Mm-hmm.
But
he's
the other
being
thing
paid
is,
for it. This is his last year of that contract.
Last year of the deal. The other thing that should be worth noting is that if you're giving Shohei Ohtani $60 million, and of course you're already locked into Julio, that means the only free
another
agents
stupid reason for giving the Julio that contract early. Sorry.
The only free agents you're going to see are going to be veterans on 1 year minimums, but you're still going to see very aggressive player development. You're still going to see the pitching pipelines, and you're still going to see trades because that's the Mariner philosophy. So what's going to end up happening is Shohei Ohtani is going to come to Seattle. The team around him is still going to be young. But when it comes to retaining some of those players, like for instance, like what happens when Logan Gilbert gets to year 6, and they can't re-sign him long term, they're going to end up shipping him out. And then the process around Shohei Ohtani, when you probably told Ohtani that he wouldn't be the only one, because the Mariners are going to straight up lie about that. They're going to tell him whatever they need to tell him to get to Seattle.
Yeah,
and they're going to pay him. But I digress.
Now, one thing as far as high spending, though, really another thing people should be paying attention to is the Mets. I mean, if look, they were just having a shit season. Maybe things bounce around their way and go in their favor a lot more next year. Kind of like the Rangers last year and the Rangers this year. Maybe there's a turnaround there. I personally think that the Rangers a little bit smarter how they spent and how they built, whereas the Mets went all in, especially on some pitchers. I mean, basically Jacob deGrom was the only guy they didn't keep and oddly went to the Rangers and got hurt. But the money that they're spending, that the Mets are spending, only because it's New York will it not sink the franchise. It's going to set them back.
Well, by the way,
it's only because they're in New York.
By the way, though, the Mets also spent a grip last season. I think it got them to the NLCS. So I mean, these especially in San Diego, New York, these just might be outlier seasons. But I will say this, as we wrap this thing down, that I just don't think the Mariners are going to shell out the money. I don't. I think there's going to be a bidding war between two teams. And I think you're going to see that contract be over $600 million. I think he's going to set new records.
I think he's going to go to the Dodgers.
And I think if they do sign him, you're only signing him for the first. That's why I think there should be an out after the first 3 years, because realistically, he's 29 years old. You're only going to get maybe 3 to 5 years left of productivity anyway. So you might as well not leave yourself on the hook for the last 5 years of that deal. But we do have a comment. This one's coming from James Render. He said, I like Anderson. Not yet enough to do another risky move for slightly more money. And I think he's referring to Tim Anderson, the second baseman for the Chicago White Sox, who at
talented
one point,
player.
Who at one point
is he fully over his injury though?
That's exactly right. But it's also, or is it a case where he just peaked early? I don't know, man. Here's what I do know about that is that he's having a horrible year. Tim Anderson is not having a good year whatsoever. But the one thing I always say, it's like, wait a second. He plays in the most hitter-friendly park in the American League, U.S. Elliott Field in Chicago, on the south side. And he's struggling to hit at home.
Sure.
And so you think that it's going to get better going from U.S. Elliott Field to T-Mobile Park? Probably not. I still think Gleyber Torres is a pretty good option for the Mariners, but I don't think the Mariners.
If he adjusts his game and he's trying to hit more line drives instead of trying to hit him out of the park, that could benefit him at T-Mobile.
Sure.
But
that would also
organizational problem is that's not the philosophy the Mariners are going with.
Right, and
so I agree. I agree with that. I've always been big on Tim Anderson. I always thought he was good. He has been a disappointment, but and it would suck to see him turn into a reclamation project. Look, if the asking price wasn't too high, would I mind seeing him come in and try and get into second base at this point? Not at all. I would be. That wouldn't bother me. It would bother me if that was the only move.
We have another comment. This one's coming from Vern. You said, we should have realized last season was steeped in wins above the curve, i.e. one run wins, extra inning wins, etc. These are not happening this year. There is also a serious lack of accountability when it comes to performances. Last year's overachieving bunch and the front office optimism really set the stage for pressuring this group the pressure this group can't handle. I agree. I
totally agree. And also, why are they not winning the one-run games? The bullpen isn't quite as good. There's been a lot of turnover in the bullpen. I
wouldn't say that it's not good. I wouldn't say that. I think they're good. I just don't think they're great.
Well, they're not as good as I wouldn't say they're as good as they were last year.
No.
I mean, you had some shutdown times. Munoz has had injury problems. Topa looked good the other night. There's been some.
I think they're misusing.
They keep striking out. That's why you're losing fucking one-run games.
Yeah.
The strikeouts are killing you.
Yeah.
And I think we had somebody comment, I think with the last show, saying, or somebody was telling you that strikeout can be a productive at bat. And I was like, no, it's never a productive at bat. I'm going to amend that a little bit. If you are in a close game, and especially if you're winning the close game, a low-scoring close game, and you're facing a tough ace pitcher from the other team, and your strikeout results in running his pitch count up, and you grind out 8 anywhere from a 7 to 11 pitch at bat, there's some solace can be taken in that. That's true. But when you're down 5-1, there's no benefit in it. And especially late in the game. They strike out too many fucking times, and that is why the one-run games are not tilting their way this year. The extra inning games, they can't get clutch hits because when you start with a runner on second, and suddenly you have an infield fly and a strikeout. I know.
You start with the runner in scoring position.
Exactly. And you can't get guys home. Was it the Baltimore game where they lost in extra innings? I took a shoe and flung it across towards the TV. Luckily, I missed.
Was that the game where they had the bases loaded with nobody out in extra innings and couldn't score a run? Or was that?
I believe that was.
Okay.
I believe that was. I'm going to look it up just to make sure I'm not full.
That's Mariner baseball. That's Mariner baseball, baby.
We have a couple times.
And we have another comment. This one coming from Austin, who says, "How about Wong and a bullpen arm for Bieber?" By the way, I know you mean well, and I'm not gonna make fun of you. But here's the thing: Shane Bieber just went on the 10-day ADL, so I don't even know if he's going to be available come the August 1st deadline. That's number one. But Cleveland needs bullpen help, and they also need outfield help. And the bullpen help is not that hard of a situation to fix because we do have Justin Topa and we do have Matt Festa that can be traded. Because when you think that they're about to call up Prelander Baroa at some point this summer, you can part with one of those bullpen arms. That's the first thing. The other thing though is outfield help. Unless you're willing to trade Jared Kelnick for Shane Bieber, I don't know.
Bieber injury problems. Bieber may not pass a physical if you trade for him. Also, since has Shane Bieber been the same since the spider tack was outlawed?
The spider tack, was that last
sticky
year?
Stuff.
Was that last year?
I think it was last 2021.
Because I think last year he went 18 and 6, 18 and 5 last year. He was very good last year.
Okay.
He's just having a down year.
Yeah. Matt Festa, I think the last option, they just moved him down to AAA 2 days ago, or I think it was yesterday. So that they could,
Correct.
that was the move they made so they could put Bryce Miller back on the 40-man. Because Bryce Miller was coming off the injured list because of the blister. So Matt Festa sent back to Tacoma. I believe that's his third and final option. So that means you're trade bait.
Right,
So,
you're trade bait.
Yeah, I can see Festa being
Festa, by the way, Festa.
But Bieber, hey man, Bieber's not a starting pitcher is not out of the realm because as you mentioned many times, you're not getting Robbie Ray back. Marco Gonzalez may not be back.
May not be back. You're going to need a starter.
Yeah, your innings issue with Wu and Miller is creeping up, and it's creeping up fast.
Right, exactly. You're going to need another starter down the stretch to win big games. And listen, man, I realize that Bieber hasn't been himself this season, but you put him in a pitcher's park, you put him in the hands of Mariner pitching coaches, and say what you will. I mean, there's a reason why we do have the best staff in baseball right now. I think it would be a good move. That being said,
I just worry about the injury.
You have to worry about the injury, and also you have to worry about whether or not he's even going to take this seriously. I think his agent already said he's going to test the market.
Okay.
So that's after next year. You're going to get him up for at least another year, but still. I mentioned Shea Bieber last week when we were doing the show because I actually think that would be a perfect fit. That would be a very perfect fit. But in order to get him, you're going to have to give Cleveland something, and just giving them 2 bullpen pieces probably isn't going to work. They're probably going to want something for Bieber, who's basically been the race for the last 4 years. Right? So, yeah.
Real quickly, extra inning games. The Orioles game was not the one where they had bases loaded and nobody out and failed to score. It was even worse. That was the extra inning loss to the Nationals where that happened in the 10th.
This one in right here, it says trade Colton Wong for a decent second baseman and a semi-used soda machine.
I'm fine with that.
That's about what he's worth. What kind of
soda machine that has Dr. Pepper or Mr. Pibb? I'm a Pibb guy.
You're a Pibb,
so I want the soda machine with the Pibb.
Coca-Cola?
If you get anything for Colton Wong, and I mean anything, if you get a fucking rosin bag for Colton Wong, that's a win at this point.
I would agree with you. Colton Wong has zero trade value right now. The reason being he's been so bad.
I trade him for a tape measure.
He's so bad that no team is even going to no team is even going to trade you for another DFA prospect, right? They're going to wait until you cut him, and then they can just claim him for free.
Because at this point, if they want to make any moves, he's going to end up having to be DFA'd, and somebody could get him on waivers.
That's exactly right.
So,
before we go, I want to ask you this because I've been thinking about this for the course of the last 5 days. Would you trade Cal Raleigh in a package? Let's say that you're looking for a better bat.
Yes.
And but the team that you are trading with needs a catcher and wants Cal Raleigh.
Yes.
Would you? Yes. I am with you. So listen, man. I know that the fans love him because he hit the homer.
He's got a bobblehead about it too. I've heard.
Right.
I think I've seen that on TV a couple times.
And I know that his pitching staff loves him too.
Sure.
But you know what? I haven't seen this ineffective offense from a catcher since. Well, let's go back to Ben Davis. Let's go back. Listen, I even think Mike Zunino was a little bit better offensively than Cal Raleigh.
I think he was also a lot better defensively too. I think the way he called games.
Yes, I know that last year he hit 20 plus. I know that. But here's the thing. He either strikes out or he goes long, and he doesn't even go long that often either.
He can't hit at home. Yeah. Look at his numbers at home. Look at Cal Raleigh's splits at home.
Yeah.
Right-handed or left-handed. At home, it's not good. It hasn't been good. It's never been good. It's probably not going to ever be good either.
I look at this and I say, I'm willing to sacrifice a bit of defense behind the plate for a little bit more consistent.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. I would actually rather see Tom Murphy start.
Yes.
right? Even if you don't get a catcher back in return, you can always call. You can what's his bucket down in Tacoma?
Brian O'Keefe.
Brian O'Keefe. If you want to bring up O'Keefe as a backup,
which I think is going to happen. I think is probably due.
Right.
As soon as there's a roster spot for him at catcher.
Tom Murphy was the original starter. He gets hurt, and of course, Cal Raleigh takes his spot. But we've seen now Cal Raleigh for 2 years. And in 2 years, he did hit for some power last year. I'll give you that. But look at it. Look at it. It's not about power. It's about his ability to get on base. It's his ability to contribute. But it's also his ability to also, contribute in the clutch. In high leverage situations late in games where service brings him off a bench in pinch hitting situations and he strikes out.
Oh,
right. I would be okay. I would be okay if they traded Cal Raleigh, and I'll say this too. I would be okay if they traded Jared Kelenic. Somebody actually asked me that a couple days ago and said, "Hey, if the Pirates made you the same offer today as they did in the offseason," and I said, "Oh, what, the one with Brian Reynolds, and Reynolds is coming to Seattle? Do I make that trade?" 100%. Let's do it now. Let's do it right now.
Yeah.
Although you're not getting George Kirby, I'll give you Brian Wu, or I'll give you Wu and Hancock. But Kelenic, Wu, Hancock, and a bullpen piece, name it, Justin Topa, or another prospect. Let's do it. For Brian, 100%, I'm doing it. And I don't it's nothing against Jared Kelenic, but you know what though? I don't see him getting extended. The pre-arb extensions that usually the Mariners like to throw around, they banked on Julio to being a star, and
sure.
Who knows, maybe he'll be a star. But Jared Kelenic had two bust seasons. This season, he only had one good month of the season, April, and extended a little bit into May. But since then, he has fallen back down to earth.
And you've got to wonder if it seems it's gone, but you've got to wonder if there's a little bit of lingering bitterness with Jared Kelenic after hearing the comments that Kevin Mather was caught on video a couple years ago.
Yes.
Making the comment of, we'll keep guys on so we can keep them. And he specifically mentioned Jared Kelenic. And then Jared Kelenic started that season in Tacoma.
Yeah.
To, I think it was 2021 or 20. Yeah. Yes. He started the season in Tacoma because they kept him another club year. And I remember going to media day at the Rainiers that day, and him and Logan Gilbert were both talking, and
they weren't
you
happy.
could have cut the tension with a chainsaw. You could just feel he was professional. He was decent to everybody, but you could tell he was pissed.
Did you by the way, did you ask him how he felt about that?
No, someone else did. I forget who it was. We were doing the whole thing over Zoom. Still, even though we were in the media room and he was downstairs, we were doing it over Zoom. Someone asked him about it, and he did the honorable thing and just said, "Hey, you know what? Baseball's business. The system's set up the way it was." He was very politically correct about it. He could have been an asshole, but there's just no way in the world he can completely feel. He gave a good answer. He gave a neutral Switzerland answer, but he seemed pissed off. The only question I got was to Gilbert. But you know what? I will say this, though, about him, about his attitude. All the time he spent back down in Tacoma last year, I think really kicked him in the ass, and it's made him a better player. Has he had his struggles this year? Yeah, but overall, is he a better player than he was 2 years ago? Absolutely. If the right deal came, would I trade him? Would I want to see him traded? Not necessarily, but if the right deal's there, look, you can't fall in love with your own prospects. I mean, you can't fall in love with your own prospects. Say the same thing about Julio. I think they're too in love with the guy now. I'm not saying they need to trade him. That's not what I'm saying. But I think that there's just this, they put him up on a pedestal that right now is a little too high. Will it be high in 2 more years? Probably not. He probably will ascend to where everybody thinks he should be right now, or will be. But Jared Kelenic leaving wouldn't break my heart. I'd be a little bummed. That'd be okay.
If it was a part of the Juan Soto deal that brought Juan Soto to Seattle, and Jared Kelenic was going to San Diego 100%.
I think I could live with it.
I think I can live with that too.
Yeah.
All right, winners and losers. This week has been big. We've only had 3 games. So winners?
Well, Boy, do I have to. The Tigers. That's my winners
The
for the week.
Tigers.
Yes, for the fact that I can't give a winner this week. I'm so disgusted. I was annoyed with the home run derby. I was annoyed that
You were annoyed with the fans from Home Run Derby.
Yeah,
because all we did was hear about it.
There was some fan sentiment. There was one guy that said it, and I did see the similar things online. That really Vlad Guerrero won the home run derby, but the real winner was Julio because of the round he had. And if that doesn't encompass some of the delusion that some Seattle fans have of what success is and what winning is, thank God the Seahawks won a Super Bowl. So it could be an example set to at least some sane people of what the hell success in a sport really is, what the pinnacle really is. Because when it comes to baseball, apparently, I mean, if you went 4 for 5 with 3 homers, you're an MVP, even if your name is Sam Haggerty. So I don't know. I had a tough time pulling a winner this week. Bullshit. That's the winner.
Bullshit. That's your winner.
Yes.
I got one. You know what? It was hard to pinpoint it. But I'm gonna give it to J.P. Crawford this week.
Okay.
Don't get me wrong. All 3 games, the Mariner offense was just a pile of dog shit. But in the midst of that, he went 4 for 9 in that series.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he drew 3 walks, maybe.
Yeah, he had some really good at bats where he grinded some things out. No, I think that's a good pick.
Yeah,
I think that's a good pick.
100%. Losers.
Losers, boy, where to pick from. My loser's got to be Ty France. He's 0 for his last 20.
Oh, yeah.
0 for his last 20 with 9 Ks. And granted, some of those calls, there have been some bad calls. There have, including a strike. He had a called strike 3. I think it was in the 5th inning where any potential rally they had on Friday night got snuffed out. That was the same inning A.J. Pollock froze at third base, by the way. Had he gone on that ground ball to second and scored, it would have tied the game, changed the complexion completely. I think Julio walked. That was the next batter that walked, and then Ty France struck out looking and was livid and got ejected, and rightly so. Service came out and argued about the call, but didn't get ejected. I was actually pissed he didn't get ejected. I think he should have went off.
Right.
But Ty France has struggled. The frustration's obviously there. But he's sucked. And as much as you can complain about some called strike 3s, there's plenty of players, including Ty France, who are swinging at some balls that are probably, I'm not bullshitting you, 15 to 16 inches off the plate or out of the zone.
Right.
So they're not helping themselves either.
Well, I'll say this, right? We live in the technology. We live in the technology age right now, and pitch tech is in major league ballparks, although it's not dictated like it is in the minors. But that being said, umpires are graded by their missed calls due to pitch tech. So if they get a call wrong, so they can definitely be taken out of umpiring crews. So they're going to err on the side of caution. If there's anything close, or if it looks like it's going to catch the plate with the sweeper, they're going to call it a strike. But there's also times where it's also late in the game. It's the 9th inning, and they want this game to be over. So they're just going to make a terrible call because the game, like, who's going to overturn it? You can't review balls and strikes.
Nope, not yet.
My loser, and I know that we do know that the lineup card comes from upstairs, but I'll tell you what, man, my loser is Scott Service for allowing that horseshit to go down on Friday night.
Mm-hmm.
You're literally going to come out of the break on 4 days, 5 days, 6 days rests, and you're not going to have your best lineup on the field. Now, like, you brought up a valuable point. Like, after game 15 or 16, where you just kind of want to give a guy a break, and you had a good pitching matchup, so you might as well just use AJ Pollock. That's one thing.
Yeah.
But coming off a break where you don't have your best lineup, and you're going to be a little rusty against a team who came out like, by the way, where was the Tigers' rust?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, they didn't look rusty at all.
No.
They look ready to go. So,
I mean, I was,
you know what? Fuck you, Scott Service. Fuck you, man.
So Kelnick did come in and pinch hit late, but that was too little, too late. In this lineup card. Here was your 3, 4, and 5 hitters on Friday night out of the break. Ty France 0 for 3, 2 strikeouts. Teoscar hitting cleanup, which bothers me. I think Teoscar's a 5 or 6 guy. I'd rather see Eugenio hitting cleanup. I mean, hell, I think Kelnick hit cleanup yesterday on Sunday in the win.
He should never be batting cleanup.
No, what are you guys doing? I guess they're experimenting. Is this really the time to be experimenting, though? Teoscar Hernandez hitting cleanup 0 for 4, 3 strikeouts.
Yeah.
Eugenio luckily drew a walk on a very good at bat where he grinded out some pitches. I think it was a 9-pitch at bat. Eugenio 0 for 3, 3 strikeouts. He almost sombreroed on that night.
Right.
So there's 8 strikeouts, 0 for 0 for 10 with 8 strikeouts is your 3, 4, and 5 hitters. In a game that you still only lost 5-4. And imagine, I mean, that's a game they probably should have won 8-5 if anybody's hitting anything. I mean, and then Cal Raleigh came in to pinch hit late too. But just looking at this rundown, Colton Wong came in to pinch hit for what? What the hell would you put a 160 hitter in to pinch? You know what? I think this guy will get on base with his 162 average. Yeah, no, I think that's a good pick for loser of the week. And I think Scott Service is one of our repeat losers of the week now.
Yeah,
I think this is 2 or 3 times you've had him.
So if it's twice, then it's a trend. But if it's 3 times, then it's a streak. If I actually put my lineup card together versus right-handed pitching, it's easy. JP would bat first.
Mm-hmm.
Kelnick bats second.
Yeah.
Julio bats third.
Mm-hmm.
And now if Ty France were running good, he would be batting fourth. Suarez fifth. Teoscar sixth. Ty France 7. Cal Raleigh 8. And then your second baseman batting 9.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, but we're almost up against the wall. So here's the answer to today's trivia question.
Let me take my shot at it.
Name the last Mariners starter with 500 at-bats minimum to finish the season batting under 200.
So I totally looked and I still didn't find it. So I tried to cheat, but I was unsuccessful. So I'm going to take a shot in the dark here. I'm going to say, because I know he had some bad years. In fact, there was a promotion where they were selling, I think, hamburgers for the price of what he was hitting. I'm going to say Dave Valley.
What year?
91.
Boom.
Okay.
And it wasn't hamburgers, because I threw that caveat because there was a historical attachment to that.
Yeah.
And it was Dave Valley in 1991 hit 194.
Okay. See, why didn't I find this? I was totally searching.
By the way, he also had a 286 OBP, which actually seems kind of weird that he would be able to get on base that much. But yeah, no, and the promotion that you were talking about was at Swanee's, which was the old Comedy Underground, the bar up top with the underground underneath.
Okay.
And they were running a beer promotion for that, for that entire season, whatever his batting averages would be the price of the beer.
That's right. Okay.
Good call, though. Good call. You got it right. Dave Valley was the last starter.
My other guess was going to be Pete O'Brien.
Let's find out if Pete actually did it, though.
Let's see. I'm looking at his baseball reference right now. Pete O'Brien, because he came to the Mariners. He was the first. No, he actually never hit under 200. 222 was his worst year in 92.
Yeah.
He was the first Mariner, or the first actual free agent that the Mariners ever signed. By free agent, I mean a guy that was on the market
and was willing to
commanding some sort of salary. He wasn't some guy that was cast off and was basically a throwaway and way past his prime. Now he could say he was getting towards the end of his prime, but I mean, Pete O'Brien had some pretty good years with Texas. But it was the first time the Mariners ever opened their checkbook and actually paid somebody. And that it turned out instead of keeping someone that they had, this is the first guy that they did it with.
And that was pretty astonishing considering that ran through the Argos Simoleon era, and Simoleon, Jeff Simoleon was broke, so it was kind of astonishing that they were able to sign a free agent to begin
Jeff
with.
Simoleon was that guy who like lied about his available credit to.
Right.
I don't know if he literally did, but he's the type of guy that, you know what, he did lie about his available credit. I don't know about baseball, but he did lie about his available credit and his money when he was acquiring radio stations with MS Broadcasting.
Well, what's
that's
funny,
a fact. That I know for sure.
Well, what's funny
the
is
FCC fined him for it.
He defaulted on it. So in order to buy the team, he had to take out a loan from, I think at that point it was called Seafirst.
Yeah.
Remember Seafirst Bank?
Yes.
Well, anyways, he defaulted on a loan that put him in a position where he had to sell the Mariners. So
no wonder they wanted to move to Tampa. Horrible owner. It's stunning that Major League Baseball approved him buying the team from Ardros. That would never happen today.
No.
Chance in hell. But that was a time when owners were trying to get out because the free agency collusion ruling from 1987 had come down in 89. All the owners were scared. They wanted to get out. I remember Ardros. Oh, God, he was quoted as saying, I'm never going to be able to afford this because the total team payroll had exceeded $7 million in 1989. The team payroll.
The funny thing is that
times have changed.
No. Today you have to have your worth has to be at least $5 billion. Your operating fund has to be double what the team is sold for.
Sure.
And or you're not even going to get considered. So yeah, a lot's definitely changed. Because when Dewey Soriano purchased the rights to the Pilots in '69, I think he only had like $2 million. So and people wonder
stole them.
And what's funny, and people wonder why that team folded after a year.
Oh, the stories of anybody that was alive can tell you it was just. I mean, it was destined to fail. It was like trying to take off on a plane with one wing.
But by the way, the historical context between the Pilots and the Mariners are the exact.
Yeah,
they are the exact
about this town.
The way that they built those inaugural teams are the exact same way. There was a reason why the Pilots had to do it because they were an expansion team and they were broke to start. So they wanted a more of a veteran team to draw crowds so they can actually build some finances.
Sure.
So they're able to extend seasons. But the Mariners already had the Kingdom.
Yeah.
Right. They didn't have ballpark issues. And
Whereas
instead of built
Six Stadium, the morning of opening day, they were still finishing building grandstands.
But they already had the Kingdom. And instead of building a young core as your inaugural team and being bad for 5 years, but by year 6, year 7, you've had draft picks and you've had, they would be good. The Mariners decided
had good draft picks. They never put anything around them.
But those first 3 Mariner teams were so horrible.
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us today.
Good stuff.
Yep.
Predictions for the week.
Ooh,
real quick. Predictions.
Okay.
I'm going to be like Mr. T. Prediction: pain. All
right. I think I'm going to say they're going to go 3-7 over the next week. So I think they're going to split with Minnesota.
Yep.
And I think they lose 2 out of 3 to Toronto.
I completely agree. I think I'm going to go with I hate to be a parrot, but I'm going to say the exact same thing.
Yeah. But then again, I mean, if they don't figure out something offensively, there's a good chance they might lose 3 out of 4 to Minnesota.
They can't. And here's that other bugaboo I've had, and I've said this in the past. They have a Thursday afternoon game. George Kirby's pitching. That's the good news. But something about those home weekday games that are non-holidays
after the night game,
the bed after that Nationals game. Yep. Nobody can call me a conspiracy theorist on that.
Well, Mariner fans, here's the thing, Mariner fans, just because you look at Minnesota's record and you see that they're 2 games over 500, and so the Mariners are at 500, they're like, oh, this is an even matchup. Yeah. Have you seen Minnesota's lineup?
Yeah.
The reason why Minnesota is where they are is because they don't have our pitching staff.
Yeah. And
right? So
imagine if Carlos Correa was playing better.
Exactly.
The pitching matchup I cannot wait to see, though, is Sunday, Brian Wu against Alek Manoah. I want to really – I'm so curious to see the Mariners against Manoah again.
Well,
this is a guy who was getting lit up by – basically was getting lit up by high schoolers in the developmental league about a month ago.
but we've also had some success off of Manoah as well too.
True.
So
True. So did the 17-year-olds apparently about a month ago.
that's funny.
Anyway.
Well, that's going to do it for us. Join us next week for episode 6 as we recap this week ahead. And hopefully it's actually going to be a pleasant surprise of a recap and not just looking towards 2024. So, All right, guys, take care.
All right, take care.